Hi, this is Kipley Brown. Lieutenant Barbara Smith on Star Trek continues. Course plotted for the biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant. It's the Trek Geeks Podcast with Dan Davidson and Bill Smith.
The biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant. Greetings, friends. Welcome to Trek Geeks, your independent Star Trek podcast. We're so happy you're here. I'm your co-host, Bill Smith. We have yet another week of fan favorite discussion for you, and we can't wait to bring it to you. And by we, of course, I do have a co-host. He tasks me. He tasks me, and I shall have him. Unfortunately, I'm going to have him on this podcast right now. He's the very resourceful Dan Davidson. Dan, how are you?
Hi. I'm resourceful, which is like, oh my God, you complimented me and I can't even believe it. So thank you. Thank you very much.
It threw me for a loop too, because I stumbled on my words and I haven't had enough.
I know. I kind of thought you passed out there for a second.
I did too.
But I appreciate it. It's always great to be here. Love doing this every single week with you, Bill. And for all our listeners out there, we love having you tuning in every week. Episode 113. That's pretty cool.
M113, some might say.
I like what you did there.
Oh, you're welcome.
Very, very nice.
Thank you. Dan, we have a fan favorite episode this week, one that we always love to do, and we have a special guest later on to help us do it.
Yeah, we love See It or Skip It, don't we, Bill? With See It or Skip It, TNG 30 still going on, so we're going to tackle Season 5 tonight. And we're very, very excited to welcome an old friend of yours to the podcast, Mr. Dan Kregor, later on. He's going to moderate/referee, if you will, our battle as we duke it out and see what's good and what's not so good for TNG Season 5.
It'll be so great to have Dan here. He from Down Under. He got me into podcasting some time ago. He's the creator of the Inside Podcast Network, which does primarily technical podcasts based on Microsoft Stack, and just some great stuff there. But he loves the See It or Skip It episode, so we said, hey, why don't you come join us? And he'll be doing that in just a bit. Dan, people may want to join us by sending us their feedback, their comments, their suggestions, their perhaps wonderful introductions for you. How might they get that to us?
Well, there's a whole bunch of ways on Twitter, Facebook, Skype, and Instagram. You can find us at Trek Geeks, and you can also send us an email at podcast@trekgeeks.com. But if you want to give us a call and leave us a voicemail, you certainly can do so by calling 508-784-1701. You can also do the same thing at speakpipe.com/trekgeeks. And as always, please come on over to our official Facebook group, Camp Kittimer. It's always a good time. Lots of awesome people over there. We love the discussion. We love the pictures. We love the STLV talk. Anything you can think of, we're talking about over there if it's Star Trek related. So just go right on over to facebook.com/groups/Camp Kittimer. Heather, Jackie, Dan, Bill, or myself will actually let you write in so you can take part in that fun over at Camp Kittimer. But you got to remember, here we go again. Please remember that any comments or messages that you leave us in any of these places may be used in a future episode, Bill.
Wow, I'm scared all of a sudden.
Horror movie, yeah.
I was almost, I expected you to go next time on an all-new Star Trek, The Next Generation.
I will have to work on my LaFontaine, because that's pretty awesome. He's the legend.
Yeah, even if you nail Ernie Anderson, the guy who did, which you do pretty well, the guy who did the TNG promos.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
Mission.
Dan, we have people wanting to subscribe to the podcast all the time. We want to tell people, if you're new to the podcast, we've made it so insanely easy for you to subscribe. It's not funny. You can get every episode of Trek Geeks automatically downloaded straight to your mobile device. Head on over to subscribe.trekgeeks.com and find out how you can get this very podcast every single Tuesday on your iPod, iPhone, Android, or other favorite device. Plus, Dan, I don't know if you know this, but did you know you can also hear Trek Geeks on iHeartRadio?
What? Really?
Yeah, Stitcher. Yep, Stitcher.
Get out.
And even you can listen to the podcast directly on trekgeeks.com. Wow. It's your independent Star Trek podcast, Dan, delivered your way. So make it so, my man.
I will do so because, as you say, I don't listen to the podcast, so I might as well start somewhere, right?
I've only got 47 different methods for you to listen to it. You think you would have heard it at some point, right? It's time for the news from TrekNews.net. Spanning the Alpha Quadrant. All the news on all the Star Treks. It's TrekNews.net.
Woof.
Online at TrekNews.net. Dan, up first. A little while ago, you were admiring a photo I took here in my home office. Abby is behind me on her bed chewing her bully stick, and you said, "Oh, look, Loot Crate." And earlier this week, we got to say, "Oh, look, Loot Crate." Why don't you tell us about it?
We are very, very excited. I've never had a Loot Crate before. Can you believe that? But
I can, because I had it before Kelly got me a subscription as a surprise. Oh. So believe me, I understand.
Very cool. Well, it's very popular. We see that a lot, but for Star Trek fans, it's finally going to happen. Loot Crate and Quantum Mechanics Incorporated, better known as QMX, have announced that there will be a Star Trek Mission Crate launching just in time for the 2017 holiday season. I've already told Sue about this, so I know what I'm expecting. It's going to be an officially licensed crate. It's going to have Star Trek figures, ships, wearables, prop replicas, which is pretty cool. It's going to ship bi-monthly. It's going to be priced at $39.99 plus shipping and handling. And oh my, I am excited. Loot Crate, Star Trek, perfect combination.
Plus, if you pay for a year in advance, which comes to like almost $300, you get a special metal replica of the 1701A, which I think looks fantastic.
Wow.
I can't afford that.
I don't know.
So I'm going to be paying,
but that's kind of cool.
Yeah. It's a shame they didn't, maybe allow you some installments. That would have been pretty good.
It would have been very cool. But you are also going to save some money if you subscribe. You'll have access to 20% off your first 3 months of CBS All Access. And I understand that there's going to be a pretty freaking awesome show starting over there in less than a month.
There is?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Well, to that end, Dan, it looks like we also have some Discovery news as I skip around and look at the wrong spot on the outline.
That's okay. It was a good segue. We'll get back to the other one in a minute.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us about what Rainn Wilson is going to do at the premiere of Star Trek Discovery?
Yeah, this is kind of cool stuff. Rainn Wilson, of course, we know he will be playing Harry Mudd in Star Trek Discovery, and you can actually win a chance to be at the Discovery premiere and after party with Mr. Mudd himself. It's a very simple process. All you need to do is make a small donation for his Lide Haiti fundraising gig that he's had going on for quite some time. $10 is the donation. And you may be chosen to win round-trip airfare, hotel accommodations, and access to that very special Star Trek Discovery premiere and party. It's kind of cool. Lide is an educational initiative that utilizes art and literacy, which builds resiliency and empowers at-risk adolescent girls in Haiti to help them make the transition into academic or vocational education. So, very good cause, and I'm guessing that it's probably going to be a star-studded event out there in LA.
I would guess so too. You figure it's the big premiere, and Lide Haiti is actually a an organization that Rainn Wilson helped found. So I think that's pretty special too. I hear you can donate, as little as $5 or $10 and still be entered in to the, I guess, a raffle, we'll call it. The more you donate, the more chances you get, of course. So that's not too bad. But what a great cause and what a great opportunity to maybe see this before any other Trek fans. I think that's amazing.
I think it's very cool. I wish I could have the time if I were to be chosen, but it just is not to be for me. So somebody else will win in my place, I'm sure.
Maybe it'll be me. Dan, we also have not one, but 2 new trailers this week. They're of the shorter kind, but man, are they good.
God, I said it before. It seems to be a broken record. Every week they're putting out new stuff. They're just teasing us, but this is top quality trailer things. With less than a month before the premiere, CBS is pulling out all the stops to get us ready for this, and it's really great. This week, a trailer emerged, and it's just close-ups of Starfleet uniforms and technology. But I got to say, the voiceover by Sonequa Martin Green is just awesome, and I'm actually gonna quote her because it's such a great line. She says, "We come from a tradition of tolerance, freedom, and justice. Our legacy of fearless exploration, of allies who respect each other's differences, honor, and civilizations. We come on a mission to understand our world and ourselves better. We come in peace." That is awesome. Awesome stuff.
That's just pure Star Trek right there. I don't know how anybody hears that and doesn't think it is, because that really sums up the philosophy in a nutshell.
It is great. And you know what, man? I know that you're excited about the other trailer, so you go right ahead and tell everybody about it. It is pretty badass.
It really is. So it focuses on the Klingons, and it's got T'Kuvma, played by Chris Obi, talking about, how people are trying to break their race down. And I'm paraphrasing now. They talk about atom by atom, and they talk about trying to remain Klingon, which has sparked some debate. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. Should we read into these words? Does that actually give us a key to the plot? Because that's very possible. But did you see it, and what did you think?
I saw it. I thought it was another brilliant trailer. The close-up, the way that they've done these trailers with the quick splashes of what you're seeing on screen for like a second, showing his uniform while he's doing this voiceover, and he's got a very ominous voice, I have to say, also. And then holding his weapons, it looked like he had the bat'leth in one hand, and of course that phrase that they're trying to take us cell by cell and atom by atom, but we must remain Klingon, was just awesome. I can't wait. It is, I got a vacation coming up in a couple weeks, or in a week, and I'm like, okay, what am I more excited about right now? Because Discovery is just going to be amazing. Period.
It absolutely is. Just reading the text, I'm on the internet now, and it's like, they are coming atom by atom. They will silence us. Cell by cell, our souls will become theirs. We must fight for one thing above all, to remain Klingon.
Beautiful.
That's really kind of foreboding. I can't wait. We got less than a month, and I want more and more and more now.
Well, you will have to wait, son, but it will be worth the wait.
Son?
Sorry, little Admiral jumping in here. Sorry.
Well, not your son. No. I'm only 2 weeks younger than you. Dan, speaking of birthdays, we did have a few of them this week, most notably the great bird of the galaxy.
Yes, happy birthday, Gene Roddenberry. It was last week we celebrated what would have been Gene's 96th birthday on August 19th, which is, that's amazing to think that he would have been 96. Unfortunately, as we know, another amazing thing, he passed away on October 24th, 1991. So it's been quite a while since we lost him. But also, on a positive note, people that we can celebrate, and I actually sent a tweet to Mr. Jonathan Frakes for his birthday the other day as he celebrated on the same day, as well as Diana Muldaur. I did not realize until just this year that she celebrates the same birthday as those two wonderful gentlemen. So happy birthday to all three. We miss you, Gene, but you will live on forever because of what you have done with this great franchise.
Well, Mr. Davidson, we return this week with yet another installment of fan favorite See It or Skip It. And this time, we're progressing through yet another season of Next Gen.
Absolutely. 30th anniversary is still upon us for a few more months anyway, so we're keeping it going. You know, we're going to do all 7 seasons this year. We're up to season 5 already. That's kind of a surprise. It's a little sad, because that means we only have a couple seasons left, but we got a lot of other seasons of other Star Trek shows that we'll be able to tackle. But you got to wonder what our good friend Amy is going to think after today's show. You know, I'm a little nervous, to tell you the truth, Bill.
Well, you know, remember season 1 was sort of a 50-50 proposition for both of us, literally. We both decided, 13 out of the 26 episodes were skip-its. Season 2, we did a little worse than that. We came in about 45% each.
Ouch.
We, again, both hit the same number. Season 3, the one we had Amy on for, I hit 96% and you hit 84%. So we did better in season 3.
Yes.
Season 4, I took a nosedive into 69% with 18 out of 26 episodes.
Ouch.
And you killed it with 80%. So it'll be interesting to see what season 5 brings us.
I can't agree more. And the other thing that's always great about See It or Skip It is who else we bring in to talk about it with us. And it's always exciting. So I think we got somebody special.
We do. We do have a special guest geek for the full hour, as Larry King would say. And he is my great friend, Dan Kregor, fellow podcaster, and some might say the godfather of this particular podcast, because were it not for him, I would never have discovered the beauty of podcasting. So, Dan, welcome aboard, my friend. It's so great to have you with us.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Dan. I kind of feel that I should be maybe dropping my voice as the godfather. Talking like this.
Wow.
No?
No? Bill made fun
That's,
of my Godfather impersonation last week, so I'm just going to leave it at that and let the chips fall where they may.
Well, that's because you're not the guest, and it's always about being nice to the guest, right?
No. You don't need to be nice. That was terrible, I will admit.
I suppose
But thank you. It's
before we get started, Dan, I should give you great thanks for introducing Bill to podcasting, because if it wasn't for that, he wouldn't have gotten involved in it, and then he wouldn't have brought me into it, and we wouldn't be causing all this suffering all over the world every week with our mellifluous tones for people to listen to.
I wouldn't go so far as to say suffering, but look, Bill and I had a very short stint doing a political podcast there for a little bit, and it was a lot of fun. And my background is in tech podcasting, but look, I'm looking forward to today.
As are we. Yeah, it's not too often you get to get your full geek on with Star Trek, and we're excited about it. So your job today is primarily to be ringmaster to us. You're going to progress us through the season 5 of Next Gen, and we will. You can pick who goes first at what particular episode, and we'll tell you whether it's See It or Skip It and why. And of course, we want you to tell us how you feel about those particular episodes too.
Sure.
So, have you always been a fan of Star Trek to some extent, or is it something you've watched later in life, or how exactly did you come into it?
So I've always been a nerd and a geek. So I was always drawn to TV shows like Star Trek, like Doctor Who and others. And I guess I really got into Star Trek, funnily enough, during the next gen phase. And it wasn't until probably I was into my 20s or 30s when I went back and revisited the older Star Treks and rewatched Next Gen and all of the movies. So always been a geek, but I guess rediscovered Star Trek in my 30s. I'm now in my early 40s, so to put context around that.
You still look fantastic, though. So
of course. Yeah.
Of course. So are you going to watch Star Trek Discovery when it comes to Netflix in Australia next month?
Absolutely.
There you go. Good
Excellent.
answer.
Yes.
You can come back.
Absolutely. I was actually hoping for a bit of Discovery news today, to be honest, from you guys, the people in the know.
The people in the know. We know a little bit. I think that's safe to say. I think I think news is a little light this week, but I have a feeling that before the weekend is out, we'll probably hear something.
Okay, well, I'll have to keep my eyes on the news feeds.
At this point, when is there not Discovery news?
I know,
Yes.
right? As of this recording, we're 30 days out, so I honestly can't wait. I feel like I'm the kid waiting for Santa to come, to the house with presents, and it's going to be amazing. I start to stammer when I start to think about it because it's the first new Star Trek in over a decade, so on television. So, all right, let's do this. So, Dan, you can pick whichever one of us goes first with episode 1, and we will hopefully regale you with some sees it or skips it.
Sounds sees it or skips it. Lovely. All right. Had I known that this would be a random selection, I would have put a 20-sided dice with me and gone odds and evens. I'm really geeking it up. As it is, I'm going to go with my namesake can go first. Dan.
If you want to go ahead, you can name the episode and then read the brief plot description, and then Dan will chime in.
Sure. So this is Redemption Part 2. So this is the follow-up to the final episode from Season 4, aptly named Redemption Part 1. So Worf leaves the Enterprise to fight on behalf of Gowron in a Klingon civil war was the rundown for Redemption Part 1. So Redemption Part 2 is the Klingon civil war comes to a conclusion. Dan Davidson.
So starting off the season on a good note, this is a definite see it for me. One of the main reasons, of course, is because Tony Todd is in it, and any episode with Tony Todd, no matter who he's playing, is worth it. That should be enough, but it's just a good ending to the Klingon Civil War, and it has repercussions throughout the rest of the show and other series. And Data being in command and ripping Mr. Hobson is worth the price of admission in itself, even if there is no money in the future. So, it's a see it for me. Bill?
I have to say this one's a see it for me also. It's a pretty key two-parter as far as Worf's development, as far as Next Gen, as far as the Klingons. But it's honestly not one of my favorites. I think it's a better two-parter than some others, but I do think it's one that people should see. So I'm going to say it's a see it.
Are you looking for my input at this point? Or?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And then I may have the Camp Kittimer results on this episode, too.
All right. For me, it was a see it, I guess. I wasn't enamored by this particular episode, though the continuation and the continuing story of Commander Sella, the Romulan commander, I thought that was, I guess, the core and critical part, along with Worf's continued growth or his... I lost my train of thought, but that's okay. The Worf part was good. That was great.
I love the Worf parts.
Yeah, absolutely.
I liked him very a lot.
Yes, I liked him very a lot.
Yes. It was a see it for me, but... I thought it was just a tad bit weak in terms of just the overall predictability of it.
Well, I have to say that looking at the results from the poll taken in Camp Kittimer, and first I have to thank Debbie, one of our campers in Camp Kittimer. She organized, an online survey for people in Camp Kittimer to go and rate whether or not they'd see or skip each episode. And then she sent me the results, almost like, PricewaterhouseCooper, and, in this sealed envelope. And I have since opened it today. And overwhelmingly, I'd say, there was one lone skip it, but everybody else in Camp Kittimer said this one was definitely a see it. So luckily we agree with them. So no more torches and pitchforks for this round.
Moving on to round 2, shall we?
Sure.
All right. So episode 2, Darmok. So Picard must learn to communicate with an alien captain who speaks in metaphors before a dangerous beast kills them both. Let's go with Bill.
Thank you. I think this one's definitely a see it. I think it's essential Trek by all known definitions. And I think that it's a great example of where Next Gen sort of transcends the original series and adds to its own legacy as Star Trek. So for that alone, I think it's absolutely a see it. Dan?
Wow. Well, yes, it's definitely a see it. And all I have to say is the podcast when the mic dropped. That's what I gotta say. Now, in all seriousness, this episode is a lightning rod, actually, I think, for love it or hate it. There's no in between, it seems. I love it. Most of the people I've always talked to love it, but there are some people who really don't. But it's great. Paul Winfield just gives a great performance as Captain Dathon. And as Bill said, it truly is what Star Trek is all about. A brilliantly done episode. Definite see it.
Couldn't agree more, to be honest. I thought, for me, this epitomizes Next Gen over and above, some of the other iterations. And I really liked the connection between the two captains, Picard and the other captain whose name does escape me. But I really enjoyed the interplay between those two, and it's a definite set.
We're right there with you. And apparently Camp Kittimer is too. They think it's overwhelmingly a see it. So far we're still in good company. Although I think coming up here, we're gonna break ways with them in a little bit. I think maybe with round 3.
And ding ding, round 3. Episode 3, Ensign Rowe. So after an attack on a Federation outpost, Picard is sent to locate a Bajoran terrorist with the help of Ensign Rowe Laren. And we'll continue with the back and forth. So, Dan, you can go first.
Sure. It only took 3 episodes before I came out with my first skip it of the season. I am just not a fan of Ensign Rowe. I never really have been. I believe they originally were going to cast her to play Kira's role on Deep Space Nine, whether it was going to be as Rowe or as Kira. I'm just so glad they went with Nana instead. You're not going to find many episodes that have Ensign Rowe that I'm going to give many see-its to. So I gave this one a skip it, Bill and Dan.
Wow, so you're a Rowe hater. I didn't know that.
I'm not a Rowe hater. I'm just not a Rowe fan.
So you're a Rowe hater.
I love Michelle Forbes.
Oh, yeah.
I love Michelle Forbes. I just don't like Rowe at all.
Yeah, Michelle Forbes is amazingly talented. I love her, but you hate Rowe. I'm amazed to learn this.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that Ensign Rowe could be synonymous with Bill Smith. Take that as you will.
Wow.
Ouch.
See, unlike, my dear co-host who I'd agree with him or else we'd both be wrong. I think this is a see it. And I think it's because it lays some really okay groundwork for DS9, and I think we need that. And I think overall it does tell a decent story, even if Riker's annoyance with Ensign Rowe is just taken way overboard. I think they could have dialed back that character a bit. But ultimately, I think I'm a see it because I think this story matters down the road.
Oh, believe me, you're not a see it. The episode is a see it.
Wow.
What, see, the line's been drawn here.
This far, no further?
Right, exactly.
I'm going to stay out of it.
How would you rate it, Dan?
I am, unfortunately for you, Bill, I'm going to have to go with my namesake, with Dan. I really am not a huge fan of Ensign Rowe either, and really couldn't get into the episode off the back of of episode 2. This was a bit of a letdown for me.
Bill, I want to thank you for inviting Dan on the show tonight. I really think he's an intelligent individual, and I look forward to having him on again.
It's great for Dan Kregor's last appearance on Trek Geeks, everybody. Thank you so much.
Come on. I was about to say, I hope I'm not setting a dangerous precedent here. But
no, it's a free-for-all, trust me. By the way, Cam Kittimer was overwhelmingly see-it with this episode, almost 75-25, maybe closer to 80-20. So I thought that was very interesting. But I do have to agree with you, Mr. Kregor, that coming off of Darmok, Ensign Rowe is a little bit of a letdown. I hadn't considered that.
True.
Yeah. Taken in isolation, perhaps it would have been... I may not have been too harsh on it, but I have spent the last few weeks rewatching the whole of Season 5 and watched those two back-to-back, so maybe that was the... maybe I didn't do justice to Ensign Rowe. But then again, it is Ensign Rowe.
Without a doubt.
Yes. Episode 4, Silicon Avatar. So with the help of a scientist whose son who lived on Data's homeworld, the crew attempt to communicate with a crystalline entity. Bill.
Well, I have to apologize to Amy Nelson from Trek FM, because she's going to find out that how I feel about this episode, and I'm going to catch a bunch of grief for it. I do think this one is a see it, but it's really borderline for me. Truthfully, I don't like this episode. I think that it's essential in wrapping up the story of the crystalline entity, even though I don't think we needed to wrap it up. But I hate the scenes with Dr. Marr, and especially the ones where Data is voicing her son. But there's some important growth for Data here, I think. And all in all, it's not it's not Code of Honor. So I'm going to call it a see it, but again, just barely over the border. Dan?
I took a test today. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do the whole one. I gave this one a see it. I like it a lot more than you do. It sounds, Bill. I thought that this was a great conclusion to the first season episode with the crystalline entity. I like that they brought it back. It's not something that you would have expected to come back. So I liked it. And, call me heartless, but the scene where Data tells Dr. Marr how unhappy her son would have been of what she had done, how he would have felt, was just awesome. You could see her just slipping away in front of our faces, and it was just wonderful.
So for me, I have to question why. I mean, as you said, Dan, you wouldn't expect them to do another crystalline entity, and I would have to question why they bothered. To be honest, you're right. There were elements of this that were great, that were fantastic. But I think overall, it's a skip it for me.
Interesting.
Camp Kittimer, roughly 71% said see it. So clearly they're lining up with Mr. Davidson pretty well so far for the most part. Probably a little less.
So what you're saying is that we can't take their judgment all that seriously?
Easy, mister.
Sorry.
Well, I would.
I'm just trying to get back into Bill's good books.
Oh, yeah. He knows who produces the show. He knows. Although I do think it's interesting. Yeah, there are really good elements to that episode, but I just it was tough. I'm really this close to calling it a skip it, but it just barely gets pushed over the edge. So what do I know?
So on to episode 5, Disaster. The Enterprise is without power, trapping Picard in a turbolift with 3 children and others in various locations. Command of the bridge falls to Councillor Troy, who feels ill-prepared. So given that we're on odds, and he is a little bit, Dan Davidson, go ahead.
Wow. I actually thought you were going to say Bill because I forgot that I started, but okay. I'm going to give this one a see it. It's not the best episode of the season, but it's fun. And even though it is it's got children in it, and usually children episodes go awfully off the rails, Picard sings Frere Jacques, so enough said. See it.
I think the best part about this is Dan's notes where Frere Jacques is spelled phonetically. But
because I don't know how to spell Frere as Yaka.
Frere as Yaka. Hashtag. This one for me is a see it. I think there's a lot of great stuff here, and there's lots of moments where the crew has to be outside their specific comfort zones, notably Troy and Picard. So this one for me is definitely a see it.
Again, I'm going to agree. I thought it was nice to see Picard somewhat uncomfortable, and yeah, it really was playful and just a real joy to watch that particular episode. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Without a doubt. Camp Kittimer agrees. I think there were a couple of lone holdouts, but overall Disaster, huge favorite.
Episode 6, The Game. Wesley visits the Enterprise and finds the crew addicted to a mind-altering computer game. Bill.
Again, with apologies to Amy Nelson, this one for me is just a skip it. This episode bores me. I don't think it's written very well. I think Ashley Judd is terrible in this episode. And Will Wheaton has yet another episode of Wesley Trek. So for me, that's 3 strikes. I can't stand the game. On to you, Dan.
I don't even know who you are anymore. Wow. This is such a see it for me. I love this episode. It is fun. It's just a great idea. And I think more than anything in the world, I want one of those games. And, Ashley Judd's cute. And yeah, there's that too. But oh, wow, man, that is a shocker for me. I'm definitely giving this one a see it. Dan, don't let me down.
I don't know who you are anymore, Bill. I thought I knew you. This is like, it's a definite see it. This two words for you, and they've already been mentioned a couple of times. Ashley Judd. Besides that, I think the episode. You're not going to miss anything if you don't see it.
Sure.
But I like the I like the robotic nature of the crew as the show progresses, and the fact that it has Ashley Judd.
I'm sensing a trend here. Camp Kittimer is 71% in the see it camp. I clearly am in the minority on this one, and I'm okay being that way.
Wow.
I think having rewatched it recently, and the fact that I am a huge, massive fan of the novel Ready Player One, there was elements of that in this particular episode as well.
Okay,
but that's just me. Episode 7, Unification Part 1. Spock is reported to have defected to the Romulans. Picard and Data travel to Romulus in a cloaked Klingon vessel to investigate. And we're circling back round to Dan Davidson.
There are bad episodes and there are really bad episodes. Thankfully, this is neither. This is definitely a see it. What else can anyone say about this episode? Even though we have to wait till the very last scene for the most part, the legend is brought into TNG, and it is a see it all the way.
I don't know how I could disagree with that, especially when you use the words "the legend." My notes here say "see it." Spock, 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 Spock. Sarek, Spock, 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 Spock. Because it's Spock, and finally he comes to Next Gen after years of them kind of wanting to keep TOS at bay to some extent. It's essential to TNG, and I suspect the next episode could have a similar discussion to this one.
I have 6 words for you this time.
Yeah.
See it, see it, see it.
I wonder how you really feel about that.
Yep.
Yeah, see it, see it, see it. I think I can count.
That's 6, yeah.
Math is hard.
Math is hard.
Yeah, yes, it is. Yes. This is it's a definite see it. As both of you have already pointed out, the fact that the legend is there, I think makes it a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Episode 8, Unification Part 2. So Spock attempts to unify the Vulcans and Romulans in peace, but falls into a Romulan trap. Bill.
Well, as one might guess, based on the previous episode, which I think has a title that's somewhat similar, see it, Spock, 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 Spock. Dan, over to you.
Yeah, I'm very similar in that answer. See it. In all honesty, it's a little light on the conclusion with Sela. We've had our conversations about that. But I got to say, the last scene of this episode, when Picard shares Sarek's memories with Spock, Spock's reaction is quite possibly the most touching scene in the history of Star Trek. All of it. It is awesome. See it.
Wow.
Even more touching than...
Yes.
Okay. Then it's very touching.
Very touching.
Yeah. I really should have run this as a single, Unification Part 1 and 2. We'll just rate them both. I don't know that any of us were ever going to say skip it. So as you've said, the last scene in Part 2 is it did tug at the heartstrings a little bit. It was pretty good. It's a definite see it.
It's interesting because in Camp Kittimer, for the 2 parts, Unification Part 1 was unanimous see it. It's the only episode in which it is unanimous. Unification 2, one person said skip it. I was really surprised by that.
Maybe they misvoted.
Maybe we'll find out later somebody really hates that episode, and I suppose that's okay too.
Yeah, their response is, look, Part 1, I gave it a see it because it was great up until the part where Spock came in. And he was in it right at the end, so overall, he or she.
Right.
Episode 9, A Matter of Time. An apparent historian from the 26th century visits the Enterprise while they help a planet prevent a nuclear winter. And we're going with Dan.
Okay, so for a long time, I would have given this episode a skip it through the years, but I'm actually giving it a see it here tonight. I watched it recently because H&I is the best channel ever. And after rewatching it, I changed my mind because basically Picard's dilemma and then the speeches that he gives to Rasmussen through the episode are classic Picard speeches, and it really shows how good a captain he is. And just the fact that Max Headroom was in Star Trek is kind of a plus too. So I give it a see it. And back to you, Bill.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I give this one a see it, although for me, I was really kind of borderline for a while. It's not an episode I particularly enjoy, and I think the plot is pretty transparent. I mean, when I saw this first run, I was like, okay, I know what this is. So, but overall, it's entertaining. I think Matt Frewer does a great job. It's interesting that this is the episode they wanted Robin Williams for originally. So when I think about it in that context, I think about what might have been, and I think that colors my perception just a little bit. So I'm going to say see it.
Yeah, unfortunately, gentlemen, I have to say it's a skip it. And Dan, whilst I agree that the Picard speeches were great, I would have been happy to skip the rest of it and just watch those. So whilst it adds to the character of Picard, I thought that the plot was weak, the storyline was weak. It was a weak episode. If you take out the Picard speeches, the rest of it was meh at best.
Oh, our first meh of the weekend. This is great.
I like that.
Oh dear.
I'm not talking to you anymore.
How about our folks at the camp?
They 2-1 said this was a see it episode, which I find interesting. That the margin was that clear. So 2/3.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it would have been a little more line ball than that, but maybe we have some diehard Trek geeks over there at the camp.
I think the next episode's going to tell us a lot.
Episode 10, New Ground. So Worf tries to be a father to his son, Alexander, while the Enterprise helps to test a new propulsion technology. This one goes to Dan.
No, come on now.
Yep. No, okay, Bill.
Okay, I'll take it. This one's a skip it for me. Honestly, I had to look this one up to remind myself what it was about. This one gets my first meh of the episode. I couldn't care less about. Was this the Soliton wave? I think it is. Yeah, it's overwhelmingly a skip it for me. You can skip this one and not even really miss anything. So, Dan.
Yeah, very similar reactions, Bill and Dan, because I gave this a skip it, and to be honest, I have no recollection of what this episode is. It's the one episode that I have of every season where I don't remember much about it. You're telling me about the silicone wave or silicon, whatever it's called, silicone wave. I don't know what it is. I just don't remember it much, so there must be a reason why. So I'm going to give it a skip it.
I think it's nice that Worf's trying to be a father to his son. I don't know that he does a great job.
Oh, he definitely does.
Yeah. I may be understating it a little bit, but look, he's trying, and that's really the important part. I think that's the message we can all take from this particular episode, which is a definite skip it. Is that at least try.
They kind of tried with this one and failed. Oh, I said it.
Yeah.
Camp Kittimer.
As did Worf.
Yeah, absolutely, he did spectacularly. Camp Kittimer, 60% of the respondents said this one is also a skip it. So
okay, so that's our first predominantly skip it one then.
It is resoundingly so too.
Yeah. So we're all in agreement there. That's a first for this episode.
Yeah, it's the first time that's happened on the negative side. So that's really great to hear.
Episode 11, Hero Worship. So Data saves the life of an orphaned boy who begins to emulate him. Dan.
Okay, so I'm going to give this a see it, but I gotta stress as much as I can stress that this is as barely a see it as humanly or androidally as possible for one reason and one reason only. I can actually relate to this episode a little bit because when I was a youngster, I would emulate people from time to time in order to hide whatever anxieties I might have been having. So that's the reason I give it a barely see it. And, even now as a grown-up, I would love to emulate Data any day of the week, and I think sometimes I do without even realizing it. So emulation is a good thing. So I'm giving it a see it, but it is by the tiniest of percentile.
I can't give this one a see it in any way. I hate this episode with a passion. I think it's tedious. I think it's overwrought, and I don't think that the kid is really all that believable. It just continues the trend of kids in Star Trek. Small trivia note: this is the episode that was in the process of being filmed when Gene Roddenberry died. So yeah, skip it.
And I have very little to add to this one, to be honest. It is a skip it, and I echo your sentiments, Bill. I thought it was, pretty weak.
I think amazingly weak, and this one was disliked by Camp Kittimer even more.
Wow.
So almost 70% of the respondents said, no, skip this one.
So again, I mean, I think Dan, you've taken a personal approach to this particular episode, which I can certainly relate to it as well. I think all of us as teenagers did some sort of mimicry, and I get that. Yeah,
that is the only reason. I mean, it's not a great episode. That's the only reason I gave it a personal see it for it. Yeah.
Yep. So we now move on to episode 12, Violations. Something that, being a friend of Bill's, I'm well aware of. Read into that whatever you may. An alien traveling aboard the Enterprise telepathically molests Troy and invades the minds of Beverly Crusher and William Riker. A tough subject for some, I would imagine, but let's go with Bill.
Thanks. I think this one's a skip it. This is like my second one in a row. That's a first for me this week. I want to be done with the episodes where Deanna Troi is violated in some sense, because I think it really does a disservice to her character. I think her character is stronger than that, and it seems like she's the perpetual target. Oh, we need someone to go through something that's a woman. I know, let's have Deanna do it.
because at least Beverly gets to do things with interphasic shielding. So I'm going to say this one's a skip it.
Yeah, this is a skip it too, and I can't remember if this was on our 10 worst episodes of TNG when we were with Mr. Morehouse a few weeks back, but it's a skip it for me. It's another poor Deanna episode, and by that, it's poor by, poor Deanna, and it's a poor episode. Not really much to like about this. I think we were all violated a little by the fact that we had to watch it.
Yeah, I certainly felt dirty and needed a shower after this one. I didn't find this enjoyable at all. And I know that there, sometimes there's going to be episodes that try and test you and push the boundaries, but this was not it. And I thought it was poorly executed, to be honest.
I agree. Dan agrees. Camp Kittimer agrees. Almost by the same margin as the last episode. We got a couple of definite skip-its in the last couple of rounds. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Sort of mid-season dip, maybe?
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah. Episode 13, The Masterpiece Society. So the Enterprise helps a far-flung eugenic human colony avoid destruction, but it upsets its delicate balance by ending 200 years of isolation. Dan, what were your thoughts on this one?
As anyone who's listened to this podcast and has listened to See It or Skip It, there is always at least, or usually just one episode of every season that I just despise. And congratulations, Masterpiece Society. You are that episode of season 5. Skip it. Done. Bill.
Congratulations, Masterpiece Society. Surprisingly, this one's a see it for me. I kind of like the story, even though there are some really far-fetched aspects to it. It does do further disservice to Deanna Troi, I think, but I like the storyline for Hannah, who's played by Dae Young, who's a guest actor in Star Trek that I love it when she appears because her characters are always fantastic. So believe it or not, I kind of like Masterpiece Society, so it's a see it for me.
So maybe it's something to do with my personality, but I have to agree that the storyline on this was far better than the previous 2 or 3 episodes, and whilst it has its moments of being poor, I think overall the storyline carries this episode, so it's a see it for me.
God, where did you get this guy, Bill?
So it'll circle back around, Dan. I'll agree with you shortly.
I'm sure. Camp Kittimer split almost down the middle on this one, so kind of like we are. It's kind of interesting.
Which leads us into Conundrum, episode 14. The crew's memories are mysteriously erased. They soon discover that they are being manipulated into taking part in a war. So let's go with Bill on this one.
I love this episode. It's a nice departure from regular Trek stories. Although, if this race had the technology to give everyone amnesia, couldn't they have built some friggin' weapons? I mean, seriously. They got to hijack a starship that can just, blow their enemy out of the sky with, phaser shots. I mean, not even photons. I think this is a really creative story. I love the way it's done. I like the confusion aspect. I like the Ro Riker storyline. It's got a nice little kicker scene at the end. This is a see it.
Yeah, I love this episode also. That confusion that, Bill, you just talked about, and the slow realization that something is amiss plays for a great hour of television. I really, really would have loved to have seen more of McDuff's actual alien race after this episode because they looked really badass. This is a definite see it for me.
Absolutely agree. And, it's a definite see it. And just to, Bill, show me an episode of Star Trek and I'll show you a bit of a plot hole. The fact that they didn't have advanced weapons, I don't know that has any great bearing on it. Maybe they're pacifists and they use other people to conduct their warfare. Who knows? And
That could be.
I guess the ultimately the downside for me is that there's not much about this particular race beyond this episode, as far as I'm aware.
No, there's not.
And I think, I'm with you, Dan. I think they could have really. I would have liked to have seen a lot more of them as well.
Yeah, agreed.
Very interesting.
Camp Kittimer likes this one overwhelmingly, as you might guess, like 85 to 15%.
Well, not surprising.
No.
It's somewhat of a blip, I guess. We're maybe starting to get back into some good episodes.
I think so.
So episode 15 is Power Play. So Troy, O'Brien, and Data are possessed by entities who want control of the ship. So this seems to be a bit of a running, with Troy being molested in episode 12, and all of them having their minds wiped in episode 14, and now they're possessed. But Dan, what were your thoughts on this?
Like Conundrum, this is 2 episodes in a row that I just absolutely love. Every time it's on, I'll watch it. I love what's going on. Seeing the cast out of their normal character element in this episode was really brilliant writing, I thought. Brent Spiner was downright scary as a possessed Data, and it was actually a little funny to me to see possessed Deanna marching down the hall with this look on her face like she was a big old meanie. And actually, you know what? Speaking of meanie, it was good to see O'Brien have a pivotal role in a TNG episode. Everything about this episode I loved. It is a definite see it for me.
I can't improve on that. You said everything that I was thinking about this episode. I love it when the characters we know and love get to do something cross-type from what they normally are. And this episode absolutely does not disappoint. So this one's a see it by far.
And likewise for me, a see it. I can't really improve on what you guys have said. It was just a hell of a lot of fun to watch that one. And
Camp Kittimer 75-25, which is really kind of interesting to me. I'm surprised that a quarter of the people just really don't dig this episode. So that's really kind of interesting.
It is. Maybe maybe next time you can get some explanations from them as to why.
Yeah, I think comments would be good. Maybe we'll see if we can work that in.
Yeah. Episode 16, Ethics. So Worf becomes paralyzed and suicidal, asking Riker to do the headma ceremony. Dr. Crusher consults a risk-taking researcher to save his life. And we're up to Bill.
We are. I think this episode is just so ham-handed. And by next week, you don't even know that Worf was ever paralyzed. I liked the idea of this episode. Just for me, I don't think it's executed particularly well. I don't enjoy it. I think it's a skip it.
Interesting. We've had a couple differences here tonight. I actually gave this one a see it, and I did so because it's an interesting moral and medical dilemma here in this episode as to how to treat Worf, and I like that tug of war that takes place between Crusher and Dr. Russell. On the negative side, I know Worf is a Klingon and all, but he just treats his son so horribly in this episode, and I just don't understand Klingons in that fashion, I guess. And also, I'm not a huge fan of Dr. Russell in this episode, not so much because of what she's doing and how she does it, but she kind of reminds me of Ellen DeGeneres a little bit too much, and it was kind of a distraction halfway through the episode.
At least she wasn't dancing.
For me, I don't know what it is. I have to come out. There's something I need to tell you guys. I'm not a huge fan of Worf. I'm sorry.
No need to be sorry. It's okay.
Took a lot for me to say that, but
you're among friends.
That being said, I have to agree with Dan. I think this episode touches on some moral and ethical dilemmas and boundaries that a lot of people, come across in their everyday lives. So this one for me is a see it, because I think it's still relevant. Some of the sort of underlying plot and the underlying story is still relevant today. So it's a see it for me.
Camp Kittimer tends to agree. I'd say roughly 65 to 70% of the respondents said this also was a see it. So I'm the odd man out on this one, and I get it.
Episode 17, The Outcast. Riker falls in love with an androgynous alien during their efforts to rescue others of the same race who were trapped in null space. Speaking of androgynous, Dan.
Wow. I appreciate that, Mr. Never Be On Again. Anyway, this is one of the most memorable episodes from a standpoint of what Star Trek is all about. They tackle the issues of today and back in the 90s in ways that makes for simply great television with a Trek spin on it. It's masterfully done, and it is a see it for good old me.
Hey, wasn't Orf paralyzed last week? Oh, and by the way, Melinda Kulea from the A-Team is great in this episode. It's a little unrealistic that Riker would risk his career like this after only knowing her for like a week, but I think this story is told well, and I think it's an important one for Star Trek, especially at this era when this particular episode came out in the early 90s. So for me, this one's definitely a skip it, and wow, you wouldn't even know Worf was ever hurt. That's amazing.
So wait a minute, did you see it or skip it, Bill?
See it.
Okay, I was a little confused there for a second. Okay, thank you.
And Worf.
Oh yeah, I thought you said skip it, but that's
My
okay.
apologies if I did mean see it. I do have it written here.
That's okay. Sorry.
Reading is hard.
You can go back in and edit that and just put see it.
I probably
no one will notice. No one will notice.
See it.
Yeah, look, it's a see it for me as well. As you both pointed out, I think when Star Trek's at its best is when it's tackling issues that are relevant to then, in a what would otherwise be a wholly Star Trek way of tackling those particular issues, and this was another one. Much like ethics, I thought this was. Every episode has its issues, but I thought this was good. So it's a see it for me.
And of course, Camp Kittimer does not disappoint. Overwhelmingly a see it by a wide margin.
That's good.
Not surprising.
Episode 18. Groundhog Day. Cause and effect. The Enterprise becomes stuck in a time loop, but the crew retains some memory of previous instances. Guillaume. Sorry, that's French for Bill.
Oh, I'd heard a rumor. This one's a see it for me. I think this is just wonderfully creative storytelling for Next Gen, and I think that this works beautifully. I remember the first time I watched this, I wonder if there was a problem with my recording because I had taped it on VHS while I was at work. And I went back to watch it, and I'm like, what's going on? Is there a problem with the tape? So once I finally figured out that the story had just changed the slightest bit each time, I realized how brilliant the episode was. So this one is, without a doubt, a see it.
Ooh, wow. I have to give it a see it as well. It's a great story, great effects, a great guest star who I wish we saw more of later down the road. This is an episode that you just cannot miss. It's a great story, it's great effects. There's a great guest star who I really wish you got to see more of down the road. This is just an episode that you cannot miss. Dan?
That's all.
Wow, I really appreciate that, guys.
I wondered where you were going there for a second. No, okay. Well done.
Comment of the day right there.
Yeah. I was actually sitting here humming to myself the
Pennsylvania polka.
The song from Groundhog Day. Yeah. It's a definite see it for me. They must have had a lot of fun recording this particular episode. Yeah, I nothing new to add. It's a see it.
This is the only other unanimous choice by Camp Kittimer. Everybody, hands down, said see it. So this is definitely some great Star Trek, no matter how you look at it.
Excuse me. Now, I may need you guys to help me in the pronunciation here, but let's see. I'll give it a go. No, that's in another episode. Never mind. Episode 19, The First Duty. Wesley is questioned over a Starfleet Academy flight training accident. Let's go with Dan.
I'm a big fan of this episode. It's got a great story, great effect. No, I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. It's great to see Wesley again, even though we all know how some people's opinions of Wesley are. It was great to see Starfleet Academy also. I loved the performances that the people that played the admirals in this episode, they stood out for me. And I got to say, I loved the character of Locarno. And personally, in my opinion, I really think that they could have had Locarno be McNeil's character in Voyager after doing a stint in a penal colony for what happened at Starfleet Academy. And there's always been a little bit of confusion. Hey, that's Locarno from TNG, and now he's Paris on Voyager. Just my opinion, but it's whatever that is, that opinion, this episode is a see it.
I can't agree more. I'm about to bleep myself, something I don't very often do, but the only way I can sum this episode up is this. Hashtag Wesley f***s up, and it's awesome. I think one of the great things about this episode is you realize Wesley is human. You know, Wesley makes the biggest mistake of his life so far, and Picard calls him on it, and Picard uses some of the toughest love he could ever use in this episode. And I think it's great character work all around by everybody in this episode, particularly Patrick Stewart and especially Will Wheaton. That's worth the price of admission just for that alone. See it all day long.
As a huge fan of the broad work that is Will Wheaton, any episode with Wesley Crusher is going to get a tick from me. I'll be honest, I have a geeky crush on Will Wheaton. So that being said, I thought the episode was really good. I know, at least my take is that Picard's always been somewhat of a father figure to Will. So to have him there to both berate him and help him back up, I think it's I really enjoyed this episode. And
Camp Kittimer right there with us. They are overwhelmingly see it, like 96%. So I think this is one of the best episodes of season 5, honestly.
Yes.
Yep. Agreed. Episode 20, Cost of Living. Now, one of you guys can correct me, but Luaxana?
That's about it.
Excellent job.
Yeah, great job.
All right. We'll run with that. Luaxana arrives to marry a man she has never met. Worf has difficulty rearing Alexander, which is exacerbated when Luaxana takes the boy under her wing. Bill.
This one, to me, is the worst of the Luaxana episodes. I don't like a lot of them. There are some good ones between TNG and her appearances on DS9, but I tune out every time this episode is on. I can't even watch it. It's that painful to me. So this one, as you might have guessed, is a skip it.
Well, everybody knows how I feel about the Luaxana episodes, I'm sorry to say. I actually gave this a see it when I was putting together my list, because I thought that this was the episode where Klingon legend Michael Ansara played her husband. And then I realized that, no, that was on DS9 because she married Odo in that episode. Spoiler alert for when we do DS9. So, yeah, this episode, it sucks. Skip it. Thank you.
Yep.
Although Tim Conway was in it.
No, stop it.
I'm going to have to agree with both of you. This was a skip it for me. The ongoing saga that is Worf and his son, and as I indicated earlier, the fact that I'm not a huge fan of Worf is all right when he's in the background, but as a core component of an episode, I couldn't get into it. So
I'm surprised that this was right down the middle in Camp Kittimer. Just about 55-45 or maybe slightly less than that. Almost 50-50. So that's kind of surprising to me on this one.
Indeed. Episode 21, The Perfect Mate. Picard forces himself to resist the charms of a female empathic metamorph who is set to marry an alien leader as a peace offering. Guest star Femke Janssen as Kamala. So that's an empathic metamorph. So, and this one's with Dan. Tell me about your empathic metamorph.
I am going to emphatically say that this is a see it. Famke Janssen. That's really the only thing that needs to be said here, other than I am for you, William of Smith.
I sure as hell hope not. The thing I like about this episode, I actually saw this episode at a Star Trek convention in Denver just a couple of days before it aired, back when they would still do that kind of thing. And the crowd loved it back then, and I still love watching it now. Even though this episode reminds me a bit of Alana of Troyes from the original series, I think this one's pulled off a lot better. Plus, it's kind of nice to look back at this now and see Famke Janssen, in a time where she wasn't as well known, when she and Patrick Stewart would later reunite to do X-Men. So, see it.
I just want to know why Picard would force himself to resist her charms. That's, it's a definite see it for me. Yeah. I did enjoy the storyline here, but much like Ashley Judd earlier, there's lots of very good reasons to watch this episode, so it's a see it for me.
Camp Kittimer, I would say probably 55% said see it. I'm amazed that this one is, again, a little more down the middle compared to some other episodes, but I definitely one to think about. But at least just over half the respondents say see it.
That surprises me, I've got to be honest. But,
yeah.
Episode 22, Imaginary Friend. A child's imaginary playmate takes on physical form and threatens the well-being of the Enterprise. Bill.
Let's see. Kids in Star Trek. Ugh. Skip it.
We've established that's never good.
Yeah, it's never good. Not once. So I definitely say skip this one. It sucks.
Yeah. Skip it for me too. Isabella is the creepiest kid ever. Even if she isn't a kid. These quote unquote youngling episodes have never really worked on Star Trek, and and the children shall lead. Does that ring an Isabella? See what I did there, guys?
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Skip it.
Yeah. Agree. Yes. I have nothing to add there. There was something of an element of the Children of the Corn, but it's a skip it for me.
You might be surprised to learn that Camp Kittimer feels exactly the same way. 75% of the respondents say, they don't want to watch this episode, and we're right there with them.
Yeah. Why did you make me watch it?
That's how I felt just last week.
Well, you made me watch it. And
well, now
we'll have words later.
Now you can just take the "you're welcome" I'm about to give you and be happy about it.
Yeah, no, this is true. Although I must admit, it's far easier watching episodes like that on Netflix than it would have been back in the 80s or 90s when it was on VHS.
Oh, tell me about it. Commercials.
I can just skip ahead 5 minutes, and I don't have to. Episode 23, I bought The Enterprise rescues a Borg survivor, whom Geordi names Hugh. Picard plans to download a destructive computer virus to Hugh, so the virus will spread throughout the collective when Hugh is sent back. Dan, you're up on this one. What did you think of Hugh the Borg?
Well, what did I think of Hugh the Borg? I'll get to that in a second. I gave this a see it, though. I don't think this is the strongest of Borg episodes, but the ramifications of what happens here can be felt in future seasons of this show, as well as in seasons of Voyager down the road. I don't think Hugh is... I think the idea of Hugh is great, and I believe Jonathan Del Arco did a fantastic performance with him. I just think the whole idea... It wasn't overly strong for me, I guess is the best way to put it.
But you still think it's a see it?
Yes, I do think it's a see it because of the ramifications of what happens. Picard gets completely crushed by Admiral Nechayev later on down the road for not giving this virus to Hugh. And then we see what happens later on in Voyager when they talk about getting a virus into the system of the collective, specifically towards the end of the series. So there's a lot that happens here that has ramifications and repercussions later on in other series besides just TNG. So it's a see it for that reason. I agree that
there's a great moral problem here for Picard. And he faces a completely different moral problem as the result of this episode later on down the road, like you say, with Admiral Nechayev. I think this episode is written really, really well. And I almost don't want to like it because I just don't like the whole individuality of the Borg. I think it weakens them to some extent. And even though I don't like Hugh particularly, even though I like the job that Jonathan Del Arco did, I do think this is just a wonderfully written episode. So this one for me is a see it.
Yep. Likewise for me. Again, you guys have an innate ability to say everything that I'm thinking. So when it comes to me, I have very little to input. Yep, the Hugh character, not particularly likable, but he is a Borg, so there's not much to like. But it's a see it for me.
And Bill, you're a Borg too?
I am a Borg. I Borg. Camp Kittimer is also a Borg because I would say roughly 96% of them said this one is a see it as well.
Episode 24, The Next Phase. A transporter accident traps Geordi and Ensign Rowe out of phase with normal space. While the others plan their funeral, Geordi and Rowe must find a way to reverse the process and save the Enterprise from destruction. This one is to Bill. So Ensign Rowe's back.
Yeah, that's great. I think this episode has a lot of problems, honestly. Not the least of which, for me, is I get that they can run through walls, but why don't they then fall through the floor? I've often wondered this watching this episode.
Plot holes again.
Yeah.
Plot holes again.
Yeah. It just takes me right out of it, though, and that's the problem. While I appreciate what they tried to do with this episode, I watch it and it's sort of like, meh. There's my second meh of the season. Yeah.
Meh.
Yeah, meh. And for me, it's a skip it. I can't get into this episode in any way.
Well, as Dan pointed out, it's another Ensign Rowe episode, and you know what that's probably going to mean for me. Yeah, but you would be wrong. I actually gave this one a see it. Out of all the Rowe episodes, I think this is the one I quote-unquote like the most. So I gave it a see it. It's got some fun aspects to it. That whole thing about the floor, though, Bill, now I'm probably going to have to hate it forever. But so thanks. But I initially, before we recorded tonight, gave it a see it.
This one was actually borderline for me, and I couldn't make my mind up. There were a lot of aspects that I just kind of went, oh, really, man, and the floor being one of them. I did pick up on that as well. I think ultimately I'm going to fall on the side of see it, just because there are some aspects to it that you can enjoy. It's a 50-50 for me, though.
That's fair. Camp Kittimer was a little more praiseful of this episode. I'd say at least 85% of them said that this one was a see it. So clearly one they enjoy and one that I don't, and that's okay.
Episode 25, the penultimate, The Inner Light. A space probe creates a telepathic tether to Picard and causes him to experience, in 25 minutes, a lifetime as a married man on a world that was destroyed a millennium ago. That's a lot to take in. Dan?
I don't think there's any doubt that this is a see it in the strongest sense. Simply put, in my humble opinion, this is the finest hour in Star Trek. Patrick Stewart is absolutely amazing in this role. This is the one that all other episodes always seem to measure up to. And as we talked about in our top 10 TNG, this is my number one. It is my all-time favorite TNG episode of them all.
Well, it's kind of hard to top that, but I'm going to try to at least agree with it. I do think it is a see it. While Dan and I may disagree on the finest hour in Star Trek, I do think if you see only one episode in season 5, this is the episode to see. It is one of the best episodes of Star Trek ever put on tape, and it stands head and shoulders above much of the Next Generation, so it is without a doubt a see it.
Would you guys say that this is probably, I know you've already indicated, Bill, that if you were going to watch one episode, it would be this, but do you think that this is the perfect description or explanation of Captain Picard? Can you think of a better episode that epitomizes Picard than this?
I can't, and I think that it gives Picard great depth because he takes this experience forward, too. This changes him. He learns a lot from this, and I think you see it downstream in the remaining seasons and to some extent in the films. Dan, what about you?
I don't think it defines Picard. I think it redefines Picard. Up until this point, he wasn't interested in children. He didn't want children on his ship. He didn't want children on the bridge. He didn't want to have a family. At least that's how he always showed things to us, and I think he really felt that. And it wasn't until this happened to him that entire thing changed. So I think it redefined Picard as he and we will know him.
Will. Yeah, I have to agree with both of you. This is a definite see it, and for me, I think that this is Patrick Stewart's probably his finest performance as Picard. I don't think you could go past this episode as in terms of TNG. I don't think there is a better one. So yeah, it's a definite see it for me. There's a better episode that epitomizes Picard.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. There's only one person in Camp Kittimer who disagrees with us. Other than that, every other respondent said this was a see it hands down. So lots of love for the Inner Light, and deservedly so.
And as much as it pains me, because it means that we're coming towards the end of the podcast, and I've really enjoyed my time today. Episode 26, Time's Arrow Part 1. A 500-year-old artifact is uncovered on Earth. Data's severed head. The Enterprise investigates alien involvement in Earth's past, and Data fulfills his destiny. Sorry, Data. I keep going with the correct pronunciation of Data.
That's okay, Dr. Pulaski. We'll allow it.
Yeah, we'll allow it this time.
Data. Sorry, Data. Bill, you're up.
This is going to surprise a lot of people, but spoiler alert, I hate Time's Arrow. To me, this story feels like, they were in the writer's room and they thought they needed a cliffhanger for the end of the season, so they came up with this. And to me, it's wholly uninteresting, and I've never enjoyed it, not even when it aired. So when I contrast this to their other cliffhangers, like, say, I don't know, little episode called Best of Both Worlds, for me, it's a skip it.
Wow. I never thought you could surprise me. However, the deed is done. This is a see it for me, man. There's some interesting aspects to this episode that I really like. First of all, the whole time loop for Data's destruction, it has to happen. It has occurred. It will occur. I think that's really great writing. The whole Guinan in the past thing I thought was interesting. The Mark Twain aspect I liked. I just think also, is there not a cooler Kane in the existence of the universe than that Snake Kane? So I gave it a see it.
Yeah, look, for me it was a see it, I guess. Much like Redemption Part 2, you watch that because it's the conclusion of Redemption Part 1. I think you watch Time's Arrow Part 1 because you know that there's going to be a Part 2, and if you don't watch Part 1, then you kind of miss the start of the next season. It is see it, I guess. It is a bit of a meh, but I'm gonna lean towards see it.
4 meh.
I know he's got more.
2
meh.
of them were mine though.
Yeah, he's got more meh than I do.
No, I had 2 meh. You had 2 meh.
Oh, you're talking 4 cumulative. I get it.
Yes.
As people might expect, Camp Kittimer and I disagree on this one. It's a 90% see it. And, I get it. The whole cliffhanger thing, I don't buy into the story. And then when they introduce Guinan, I totally come out of it. So what can I say?
Fair enough.
Hey, I will say one thing. Mark Alimo's in this episode. That's another reason to love it. Gul Dukat himself playing a card player. Awesome.
He is, and so is Jerry Harden as Mark Twain, which is really kind of great.
Yep.
So, gents, that is all 26 Season 5 episodes. Mr. Kregor, you'll be very interested to hear you liked 17 of them in the See It column for 65.38%. And our percentages are actually exactly the same. I also chose 17 episodes as See It for 65.38. Mr. Davidson, how about you?
Yes, I think Amy's going to be slightly happier with me than with the two of you gentlemen, although she's not going to be super happy because out of the 26 episodes, I liked 20 of them for a meh 76.92% like rating. See it, 76.92.
That's just shy of your last season, Dan, by 1 episode. That's actually pretty good.
Right.
I think I'm about spot on. Or thereabouts. So,
nicely done.
I was. So, Dan Kregor, thank you so much for spearing us through this season. It was a joy.
Thank you, guys.
It was a joy to have you here. We hope you'll do it again with us someday. Where may people stalk you on social media?
When I'm on there, and I've been quiet lately, I am on Twitter, Dan Kregor, DANKREGOR. I'm on Facebook and all the rest of it. And if you are so inclined and you're interested in the Microsoft Cloud Stack, go to ipn.tv. That's where our podcast is. If you're interested, I'm going to throw that in there.
Absolutely, you should, and I'm glad you did. I catch it infrequently, and because I kind of get tied up producing a podcast, I now understand all that you go through.
How much work?
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
but you do a great job over there, and I thank you for all you've taught me over the years, my friend.
No, thank you, guys. It's been a lot of fun, actually. I've really enjoyed it. So, thank you both for inviting me on.
It's our pleasure to have you, man. It was great to meet you finally, so I could thank you, and also I could just listen to you read these descriptions all day long. Your accent's cool.
Why, thank you.
Dan, what a blast. It was so great to have Mr. Kregor here. I feel like I got to differentiate between the two of you still. But definitely some interesting results for See It or Skip It.
Yeah. I was surprised. It was interesting to me that, and we talked about it when we were going through See It or Skip It. It seemed that a lot of the Skip It's were kind of bulked in the center of the season. The beginning was pretty good, the end was pretty good, and there were some what ifs in the middle there. Very, very interesting stuff.
I agree with you, although I do think now I may have to go out and register the domain amynelsonhatesme.com. Because this is 2 seasons in a row. I haven't, I'm sure, been up to her level of fandom, and I'm sure I will get an earful.
I'm sure you're going to get an earful, but I'm also going to give you a fair warning. If that's the case for this season and last season, you just wait till season 7, I kind of think.
My early prediction is that season 7 might be lower than season 1, but I haven't charted it yet, so I don't know.
I'm not going to be there when you two were in the same room that day.
I'm going to invest in like some body armor.
I will say, in addition to having a great discussion with Dan and getting to quote unquote meet him for the first time, don't you just love the time that we're living in, man? We were talking to a guy who was on the other side of the planet and having a great conversation, and that always blows my mind that we can do that. Talking to somebody from down under, as you said earlier, is just an incredible thing. I love technology. I love what we're doing today. It's great, fun stuff.
It truly is amazing. I haven't seen Dan physically in several years now. Last time my wife and I met up with him in Las Vegas while we were there on vacation, and we got together and had a couple of meals together. It was such a great time, but he's a wonderful guy, and unfortunately he won my fantasy football league last year, so now he must be vanquished.
Wow. Okay. Well, was he playing against you? As well as others?
Me and other people.
I'm not surprised he won. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Dan, you're a horrible person, and we would continue to be horrible people if we didn't thank 5 Year Mission for all the music they let us use each and every week on Trek Geeks. It just sounds so fantastic to hear every single week. I listen to them all the time. You listen to them all the time. We want everyone to listen to them all the time. That's not a joke. Head on over to 5yearmission.net. Score yourself some great tunes. Become a huge fan like Dan is, like I am. We guarantee it'll make your life better.
It certainly will make it better. They've got so many albums out there already. Year 1, 2, and 3. Spock's Brain, The Trouble with Tribbles, and coming soon to a headset near you, Year 4. They've been giving us some teases. It's right around the corner, and we are very, very excited. But as always, a podcast of Trek Geeks cannot go by without me talking about a special episode that I watch, because I take the time to watch a special episode every single week, and this week is no different. It was the classic season 5 episode Darmok. We talked about it just a little while ago. Some people may call it Farkmok, and I'm not going to, say that's good one way or the other. But it's an amazing story, Bill, of how 2 different people must come together and help each other without really even know how to speak to each other. But in the end, as you know, there was tragedy. Captain Dathon fell, just as Picard realized that their unique form of communication was something he could understand. There will always be struggles, but we will always remember it simply as Picard and Dathon at El Farkdrell.
Oh my! That was a whole lot of setup, man.
It was. I had to get people ready because I was sure there was going to be a big disappointment at the end. But
and you delivered that, so
they're never going to stop, man. As bad as they are, it's kind of like watching a bad movie. You just have to keep going and keep watching it.
No, you really don't. No, it's kind of funny the way you describe. Darmok is almost the same way someone described this podcast.
It's very nice.
So yes, 5yearmission.net, please. Go get all their stuff before Year 4 comes out. You will thank us. Dan, we also want to thank Aaron Harvey from Trek FM. He who created the amazing Delta that you see on the album cover of this podcast when you download it. It's just such a beautiful piece of work. And Aaron's got 2 great podcasts that he's part of over on Trek FM. Saturday Morning Trek, which covers Trek in the 1970s, and also The Edge, their dedicated Star Trek Discovery podcast. So head on over to Trek FM and check out Aaron's work. He's also online and Twitter at GeekFilter. So please show him some love and support. Dan, next week, we're going to go on a much more serious note than usual with the Trek Geeks podcast. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, you and I have had a lot of discussions on this subject over the last 2 years. And we feel that it's time to tell my story. So next week, as I am actually off to Disney, the podcast is going to talk about the episode that literally saved my life and how it saved my life. It's going to be Deep Space Nine's Captive Pursuit. And I got to admit, it's going to be a tough conversation. But at the same time, we're both looking forward to sharing it with everyone because it is a very, very important part of my life and your life, as a matter of fact. So that's next week.
That's very true. And Dan, as a programming note for parents, as a heads up, we will have a parental advisory at the top of next week's podcast. And again, at the beginning of the discussion, for those of you parents out there that may want to listen in the company of your children normally, this is a serious topic, and we certainly don't want you to be caught off guard. So that's next week. Dan, for more great Star Trek discussion, we want everyone to check out the Tricorder Transmissions online at thetricordertransmissions.com. And, of course, for all the news on all the Star Treks, please visit our great friends at treknews.net. For now, this has been episode 113 of the Trek Geeks Podcast. We do hope you all live long and prosper.
Seize the day, Maribor. Make the coconut most precious. Coconuts will never come again.
Okay. Good morning.
We have not recorded this early in quite a while, sir.
I blame you.
Yes. I'm drinking coffee instead of alcohol. Maybe I should put some alcohol in my coffee.
What? I want to know why you became a quitter, because I'm drinking booze.
Yeah, I doubt that. You haven't drank booze during the nightly recordings in like a month.
Probably more, actually. And there's a plane going overhead.
Oh. Hi, wave to everybody. I'll be on a plane in a week.
I hate you.
Very excited. You know what else is exciting?
I hate you so much right now.
This is my last weekend statement run ever.
Yay!
I'm very excited. So yeah. So I got that going for me, which is nice.
How do you really feel about that?
I'm feeling not too bad.
Yeah.
I gotta say. I'm not gonna lie.
Don't lie. Oprah hates it when
No word of a lie, as my brother-in-law likes to say all the time.
What does he say?
No word of a lie.
What is wrong with him?
When he really wants to get a point across, he'll be like, I gotta tell you this. No word of a lie. Bill Smith is a big jerk. And so then you know that it's really true. So, yeah, that's what he says.
I don't think he said. I think he likes me better than you.
I'm probably guessing you could be right about that. Okay, and I'm gonna give him a hard time right now here on this here podcast, just because I can, because he doesn't listen to it. We play Warcraft, and it's just the family when we play. It's just Sue and I and my sister and him and my nephew, and we just go run dungeons just for the fun of it. He's not a very good healer, so if there's anybody out there playing Warcraft and you ever need a healer, don't pick Chris. 4444444. I'll just leave it at that. Do you want an explanation for that?
I really don't. You said Warcraft, and I just tuned out.
Wow. Okay. I see how
What?
it is.
You said
I don't
something.
tune out when you talk about your stupid stuff.
I don't have any stupid stuff. I have Star Trek, and I have my dog and my wife. Not in that order.
Okay.
None of my stuff is stupid.
All right.
I'm not saying yours is. I just, whatever.
Lead up.
I'm of the opinion now that Boz Skaggs is taunting me ever since we did that. Because he pops up on my XM radio so much more now.
I want to thank you very much for bringing me to that yacht channel because I love it.
Oh, Yacht Rock?
Yes.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's like our childhood.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I never use XM anymore because I'm either listening to see what's going on with sports, which is very not often, or now I'm listening to Mission Log or Us or Trek Ranks. So I'm doing all that on my phone in my car driving to work. Yeah, I found that channel when you told me about it, so I'm listening to a lot of music now, and it's pretty cool. Yeah. They're gonna. Oh, I got an idea, dude. Brainstorm right now. I like that. I'm gonna call Mr. Sirius or Mr. XM. I'm not sure which one runs the place now. 5-year mission channel 1701. Fireworks.
I love the idea. I don't think they have 1701 channels.
That's the thing that you're gonna give me a hard time about?
I'm not giving you a hard time at all. I'm just thinking you may need to, rein in your expectation. Maybe channel 326.
Oh, that would be good. Yeah.
That would be good.
Yeah, I would like that. 12. Let's see. 1031.
So you get 3 digits, yeah.
1031 would be too many. Yeah, so okay. Yeah. 01 is taken.
Yep.
We'll figure something out, but that'd be a good channel. I'd be up for that.
That was just a quick test of the intro bumper for Discovering Trek, because we use that in Trek Geeks between segments, or at least we used to.
I love that segment.
It doesn't quite get high enough or loud enough. So we'll probably still have to edit that in afterwards.
Okay. I like that.
I mean, you can still talk over it here, but we want it, when the rest of the instruments come in, to get a little louder, and then we can't do that here.
So Captain Lorca died tonight. Oh my God, can you believe it? We're going to talk about that next on Discovering Trek, your independent Star Trek Discovery companion podcast.
No, drop independent.
Oh, we're going to drop. That's right. You told me that the other day. I've said it so many times. It's in my brain now.
Drop independent and drop podcast.
Star Trek Discovery companion.
Star Trek Discovery companion.
I like that. It takes less time for me to say it, so I don't have to think as much because I'm not very smart.
Plus, people know they're downloading a podcast. Really?
All right. Well, you say it on this one.
I do when I describe the podcast, and I talk about we have a new podcast coming.
I agree.
But even at the Fansets party, I referred to it as a Star Trek Discovery companion.
One of these days, I'm going to be as smart as you and as good looking as you, and gosh darn it, people will like me.
That ain't f***ing happening.
Wow. Woo. Beep. Okay. I see.
All right, jerk face, you ready to do this?
Ready.
All right. Do it. I need coffee.
I've got some maple coffee from Parker's Maple House.
That sounds about as horrible as coconut coffee.
No. Oh. You don't like maple?
Not in my coffee.
Oh,
I like it really in one place, and that's on pancakes.
That's awesome. I love it. It's great.
Oh.
I've got an idea now. Maple coconut coffee. Oh, boy.
I'm going to mute you forever.